Welcome to the Helix webinar series. Today's session is on tooling to support upgrading to Helix containers. So this is one of our final in this series, and today we're going to be covering workflow and auto recon utilities. I'm joined by Sankar and Murali, who have been running this series with me. We are roughly going to be covering about 50 minutes of content. There's about a 22-minute demo, so we will have at least a little bit of time at the end where we can open up to live Q&A. So we would ask for now if you can remain unmuted. If you do have any questions during this session, please use the Q&A section of Zoom, which is at the bottom. Ask the questions, and when one of them aren't actually presenting, we will be answering those questions. And then when we get to the end, we'll open up for live Q&A. So I'm just going to do another reminder as well, because we're recording this and we allow live participation at the end. If you don't want to share your name and want to be anonymous, if you want to change your name, we do share all of this content out on social media, including our platforms in BMC like communities. So I'm now going to hand over to Murali. Murali, if you just want to go through the agenda and get started.
Thank you, Sam. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're excited to cover these series with you. So as Sam said, this is the final one, and but we'll be sending you more videos as and when we get more features or anything we couldn't cover. We'll be sending you some more videos with that. Let's get started. Shankar, next slide, please. Next one, please. So today's agenda, so as Sam said, we're going to be covering kind of two utilities, right? So the workflow migration utility and auto reconciliation utility. The manual reconciliation, three-way reconciliation, you might be already aware. So, but again, we're going to show a different perspective of that, how you can do the three-way manual reconciliation after the auto reconciliation. So hopefully your effort of manual reconciliation is less. So that's the whole idea of it. So I'll be covering the content, and then Shankar will be doing a demo, and he'll further cover some more slides, and then we'll go for Q&A, right? Next slide, please. So let's see what we should do for planning. So end of the day, so these tools, right? So we are supporting for both the use cases. One is on-prem deployment and upgrade, and then the on-premises SaaS, your migration, or you want to call it upgrade, or your what do you call onboarding, for the terminology people use, right? So we're covering both processes. So if you see this slide, so this is the on-prem container deployment use case where you basically deploy install your what do you call the platform services and applications, and then stage 3 is when once you have your deployment and everything done. Stage 3 is when you'll be migrating your customization. So that's what's highlighted here. Next slide, please. Same thing, similar process on the on-prem to SaaS end-to-end process migration, where stage 1 is where you will get your systems activated by the SaaS team. Right, stage two, you'll be making sure you have all your connectivity and FTP connections and all that good stuff, and of course your client gateway and all that good stuff. And then stage 3 is where you'll be doing your customization, migration or export import. Right. Next slide, please. So just a friendly reminder. So we always say that any tools, right? Doesn't matter if you're doing an on-prem deployment or on-prem to SaaS. Anything we call it tools has to be in the on-premises, right? So if you have both, if you're doing an on-prem deployment, of course, you'll have your what do you call the tool server in the same network as your deployed container. Wherein if it is in SaaS, you'll be using that client gateway to make the connection. So that's the only difference. But the tool server will always be on the on-premises side, right? So as you know, we have already covered the HTM tool earlier. So DWP workflow migration utility was also covered. DWP data migration also covered. So now this workflow migration utility, license conversion, auto recon, these three are not data related, but they are kind of related to move your objects, right? And license conversions, of course, data related half and half. It does an assessment and it does a conversion, right? So we're going to cover the workflow migration utility and the auto reconciliation utility today, right? And on the other side, if you see, we have listed other tools you may have to have on your on-premises tool server, right? Next slide, please. So there are three ways you can, I would say few ways you can migrate your customizations or export input your customizations, right? So the first and foremost, we want to recommend, if you're already in 2002 version, right, is workflow migration utility. So workflow migration utility, it does everything or nothing. In the sense, it basically exports and imports all your customizations on CMDB, all your customizations on AR, right? AR objects. So when I say customize, it's overlay objects or custom objects, right? And then Developer Studio, as you know, has the same capability of exporting objects, overlay objects and custom objects and importing. And Deployment Console is a user interface through mid-tier that also has the same feature. So through Deployment Console, you should be able to again grab those overlays and custom objects, and you should be able to import, right? And then there's one other method called packaging list, which we'll cover, which it's basically a combination of Developer Studio and a Deployment Console. So just to summarize, thanks, Shankar, for the next screen. So let's summarize workflow migration utility, anything 2002 we cover. And as I said, it can only do everything, right? So let's say if you want to do, if you don't want to bring all the customizations, you want to handpick, or you don't want to bring all your customization on CMDB, you want to handpick, then you cannot use workflow migration utility, right? That's why you need to use these combinations, right? So other than the workflow migration utility, if you're not able to use it, the other one we strongly recommend is using the packaging list. The advantage of that is you will still use the Developer Studio to export the objects. But before importing, the deployment console has a feature where you can only deploy overlays, which means, let's say you have a definition file which has overlay and the base objects. The deployment console will only import the overlay. But wherein if you're doing it on Developer Studio, you have to go manually remove those base objects and then import. So that's the advantage. So if you're not able to do workflow migration utility because of the version situation, or you don't want to bring all the customization, then we strongly recommend using the combination of Developer Studio and Deployment Console with the packaging scenario. Okay. Next slide, please. So this slide walks you through the workflow migration utility steps, right? So it needs to be done through the command line. So once you run through the command line, there are syntaxes where you can run everything at a time, or you can do one at a time, right? So let me explain what each of these steps does. So first step, what it basically does is it basically migrates the groups and roles data. That's what it does, right? The second one, it moves all the CMDB objects, not just when it says customization, basically we moved all the classes and all the attributes. That's what it does, right? And then it validates. So step 3 validates it. And step 4 is basically, we have seen, no, it's a corner case, but we have seen that in some cases, customers will be missing some base objects, right, which is needed. So step 4 is for that. If any base object is missing on the target, it'll bring it. But again, it's a very common case. Step 5 is basically to support the auto reconciliation, we need to have the files, right? So the definition files and whatnot. So that's what the step 5 does. It exports all your base overlay objects for the auto recon purposes, right? So step 6 is basically expose and imports, basically your application regular forms and overlays. Step 7, it rebuilds some unions. I'm going to share another screen where I'll walk you through what unions it does rebuild. Step 8 is basically, since you're routing your CMDB data, step 8 will basically sync it to the asset side, right? That's what it does. And step 9, it migrates the rest of the forms like joins, view, display forms, and anything like workflows, all that it'll do, right? Anything missed out, right? Step 10 will basically do the, it'll trigger the auto reconciliation, right? Sorry, that is the migrated auto-generated objects. So what that means is it, yeah, I mean, I need to get back to you on that. So Shankar, do you know what that is? Migrated auto?
Yeah, so yeah, it's like, auto-generated objects like SLM approval and those kind of
okay,
things.
okay, you're talking about those. Okay, got it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and then 11 basically it validates it, and 12 is run the auto reconciliation, right? So I was just confused with auto recon word. Sorry about that. So the auto reconciliation basically, as I said, it's another utility which basically this utility can trigger. It'll trigger automatically, and then it'll do the auto reconciliation for you. So we'll explain what this auto reconciliation is and how to run it and all that in a few slides. Next slides, please. So this is how you download the utility, right? So you go to EPD and you search for migration, you'll be able to find the workflow migration utility version. So always please download the latest version. That's what we recommend, right? And again, these tools needs to be on your on-premises tool server. And once you download it, you're going to, thank you, Shankar. Next slide, please. Once you download it, you're going to see a folder structure like this. And depending on your, again, this particular utility supports both Linux and Windows, but if you, yeah, once you open up your Windows folder, you'll see these files, right? And then there's a jar file, right? The migrate customization, that's what you'll be running. So if you see that, so there's a Java command, right? And you'll be running the jar customization file, right? And if you see, these are the parameters. So the source server information, the credentials, and the target server information credentials. And the two important things you have to note here is the three parameters: OP, STP, and single, right? So OP is the operation, which is the migrate. Step 0, which means it's going to do everything, right? When you put 0, it's going to do all at the same time. Single true is it's going to do either single or step by step, or it's going to do all. That's what that parameter is for. Next slide, please. So again, this is just a summary of what are the values, right? So all this for all the steps, for 0 through 12, right? And the single parameter true means run the workflow in a single step mode. False means it'll run for everything together. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this will be the when you run it, it'll create the folders and all the objects will be in these folders. So this is the folder we're highlighting for. If there's any base missing objects, it will be put in this folder. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I was telling you, right, it'll rebuild some unions. So these are the unions it's going to rebuild. So there are like various unions in available, right? So this will rebuild the unions. The reason it rebuild the unions is because after that, after it imports, the unions may not be in a usable state. So that's why it'll be rebuilding it. Next slide, please. Okay, so with this, I'll hand it over to Shankar. So he'll basically do a walkthrough to a demo. And it's going to be a 20-minute demo, but and there's a few minutes where he'll be doing some talking points. Over to you, Shankar. Thank you.
Hello, this is Shankar. So I'll be walking you through the demo, and then I'll walk you through auto recon and three-way recon steps. In this demo, I will demonstrate how to execute the workflow migration utility to migrate all the customizations from a source to a destination ER system server. Before executing this utility, it is highly recommended to take a database backup to ensure a good restore point. Let's first review the environment before running the utility. Ensure that ER server is licensed and fully functional. I will begin by checking ER system license form. So confirm that ER system is licensed and it is valid. That's a step 1. And the step 2 is you can go to ER system centralized configuration form, go to server settings, and ensure that the max ER system max attached file size is set to 0. So now let's review the groups on the destination. So totally I have 441 groups on my destination ER system server. So now let's review customizations on the destination server using Developer Studio. So this is my destination server, and let's look at custom and overlay. So I have totally 0 customizations. And similarly, you can review other objects before migrating. So now let me show you the customization that I made on the source server for this demo. So here I have totally 79 overlay and custom forms on the source. And the groups, I have totally 211 groups on the source, but I see there are 2 groups added for this demo purpose. Ensure you are using the latest Java version and also have downloaded the latest version of the workflow migration utility from BMC EPD website. Once you extract, you will see the following folder. So you will see various folders like CDM checker, configuration, features, P2, plugins, Recon report utility, working directory, and so on. So for this demo, I'm just creating a folder cust eng remedy 06. So that is my source server. So I will be passing this folder to the utility. Now let's proceed with executing the workflow migration utility. So I launch the Windows command prompt and use the following command to execute this utility. This command includes various parameters. So you should start with command Java and you need to pass certain parameters, including the jar file name and source server name, source server username, source server password, source server port, and then you have to pass destination server host name, destination server username, destination server password, destination server port, and the path where you want to generate the logs, and then parameter migrate. And then here I'm passing parameter 0 and signal false, which means it will execute all steps at once. It will not pause anywhere. It will start with one. It will migrate groups, then it will migrate CMDB objects, then forms, workflow objects. It will rebuild unions, and then finally it will do auto recon. So let me execute this utility. So now it started with step 1. So migrate permissions. So it completed exporting of groups. So sorry, it is completed migrating groups from source to destination. Now it proceeded to step 2. So while executing this utility, you can go to working folder and go to the logs folder, and you can open this log and you can review the logs. So it completed step 1. Now it moved on to the step 2. So the step 2 is also completed. So now it so now I see the utility terminated at step 2. By looking at this error, it says cannot find so and so folder structure. So there is a mismatch in my folder structure. So I fixed that one. So now let's execute this utility. Since it already completed step 1, so I want to start with step 2. So here when you give step 2 and signal false, so what it does is it will start with step 2, then 3, 4, and so on till step 11. So let's proceed with step 2. Okay, so now it proceeded further. I don't see the folder error that I saw before. So now it is migrating all the CMDB objects from source to destination. So step 2 is completed. Now it is proceeding to step 3. Let's look at the logs. So I see step 3. So step 3, just do validate CMDB migration. So it completed step 3 and then it proceeded to step 4. So now it proceeded to step 5. Then next it proceeded with step 6, migrate application and regular form overlays. Then rebuild union without unum. So you may see a lot of information which you can ignore that may be useful for the support. In case if you submit a case, they should be able to review this information and they can connect the dots. Then proceeded to step 10, migrating auto-generated objects. Then step 11, validate overlay migration. And then final step is running auto recon and generate the report for manual recon process. Let's review the different files created by the utility for exporting from the source and importing to destination. The first one is all source groups .arx file. This file contains export of all the groups from the source server. So basically the server, what it does is, it will export all the groups from the source and it will create ARX file in this folder. And this will be used for the comparison and, take the difference and then it will migrate to the destination server. Then we have the group.arx. This file contains export of all the groups from the destination server. So utility, what it does is it will first export all the groups from the destination server. It deletes and then it will import all the groups from the source and then it will import these groups back with a merge option. If there is any conflict, utility will automatically handle and it will generate a new group ID or whatever, so that it will not conflict with existing groups. So now let's move on to the CMDB folder. This folder contains various files detailing which classes and attributes have been modified, deleted, or created. It also includes XML files that represents export of class and attributes to migrate from source to destination. For example, changed attributes. So if you look at this file, it will have all the attributes that are modified on the source. And these are the attributes migrated to the destination server. And similarly, changed classes. So there are no modified classes in this. Now let's see the new attributes and new classes. So let me open this new class. So there is one class that was created on the source. And these are the various attributes that are created on the source. So these are the, classes and attributes will be migrated to the destination. So the utility, it will create the definition, the CMDB class and attribute definition in the form of XML file. So we have seen newly added class BMC underscore cloud infra. So it will get the definition from the source, and the CMDB driver is used behind the scene to migrate this class definition or attribute definitions based upon what has been changed or modified or created. And similarly, if anything needs to be deleted, it will delete based upon the information. So now let's move on to the next folder, which is a customization folder. This folder holds the definition files generated by the utility from the source server, which are used for migration to the destination server. So for example, overlay regular form. So when you open this, you will see what, all the overlay forms that are migrated to the destination from the source. And similarly, join forms, and similarly, auto-generated objects, audit archive forms, and so on. So now let's move on to asset sync. So again, similarly, the way it did for other objects, there are certain asset forms needs to be synced because of the classes that we added are modified during the CMDB metadata migration. So these are the various def files created by the utility based upon the difference, and this will be imported onto the destination. So the next one is the Recon folder. So once all the objects are migrated, so what it does is it will do reconciliation. So if there is any change has been done, part of this upgrade in the base layer, what it does is it will cascade those changes to the overlay layer. So earlier, we need to perform three-way reconciliation for all the objects, which is a tiring process. The reason is some of the objects may not need our manual intervention. So the utility got simplified, and the auto recon job will automatically cascade non-conflicting changes from base to overlay objects. If there is any conflict, such as, for example, if you add a menu item or list in the overlay by the user, and if that is occupying the range that was already defined in the base, then utility cannot merge. So then that can be handled in the three-way reconciliation process. So if it finds any conflict, so what it does is it will generate an XML file with those list of objects that needs to be reconciled manually. It also generates folder for each object type containing all the base objects from the source server, which are necessary for three-way reconciliation process in the upcoming steps. So for example, if you look at this form, so it will have a list of all the overlay forms with the base object definitions here. And similarly, filters. So there is no overlay filter. So that's the reason it's empty. Escalations. No, there is no customization done. So no active links. No. So for this demo purpose, I did just make modification only to the forms. And that's the reason, we see the base objects modified. So when you perform three-way reconciliation using Developer Studio, so you have to copy all these folders and the XML file, and then you can use that for the three-way reconciliation. Let groups that are migrated during this migration process using the workflow migration utility. So on the source, I created, few groups. So let's search for that and see if that does exist. Yeah. So these are the two groups that I created on my source and that got migrated into the destination. And there are a couple of other groups might have modified, but I'm pretty sure I added these two groups for testing. And similarly, I created a class in CMDB, which is called BMC underscore cloud infra. So it associated in CMDB with the name BMC underscore cloud infra. And then also I can see my regular form, which is a custom form, got migrated. So you can, perform the validation, make sure that all your objects are migrated properly. If you see any object missing, then go back to the logs, do a troubleshooting and see why it failed. So if there is any associated error, you can troubleshoot by enabling API SQL logs. Once you identify, fix it, and then you can rerun the workflow migration utility to bring those objects back. If you're still not able to find out, then you can submit a ticket with BMC support for necessary help. So this concludes the demo. Let's review the best practices for reviewing the logs. So whenever you review the logs, make sure like you can search for error or warning, and you can see, if there are any failures. There is another way of doing it. You can use the step keyword and you can search for that step to see if all the steps are executed. If you experience any errors, what you can do is you can troubleshoot, fix it, and then you can rerun the utility with that same step, and so on. So these are the common errors, not common errors. So these are the some customer specific scenarios, real world scenarios, I would say. After running the utility, they experienced one of the issue where it failed to migrate the form. So when we troubleshooted, so this form is not an out of the box form, and it was created in the base development mode, and then they created an overlay on top of it. So instead of creating in the best practice mode as a custom form. So during the migration, the utility only migrates overlay since the base object is not present on the target, so migration failed. So in order to remediate this error, so what they have to do is they have to go back to their source. They need to cascade the changes of overlay to base, and then they have to delete the overlay form, and then they have to convert that form to custom. Since it is a custom form, and it should not be created as an overlay. So once they fix that, then they can rerun this utility, and then what will happen is this form will be migrated to destination. And this is another sample error. So what happened is, it failed to migrate one of the form, and the root cause is, you know, uh, because of some, value was not present in one of the form. Since unions are, unions are built using multiple form at the database level. So if any one of the value is mismatched, then it automatically fail to create at database level, and because of that, then form might fail to migrate. So in order to fix this error, so enable the API SQL logs and identify the underlying SQL that is causing the issue, and see what exactly uh, mismatch uh, with the values. And once you fix it, then you can rerun the utility. It will migrate, it will rebuild the union, and then it will migrate the form. So let's move on to the next section, auto recon utility. So the auto recon utility is already run part of the workflow migration utility as a step 12. If you perform manual migration using Developer Studio or AR system deployment console, you can use auto recon utility included in BMC Developer Studio, or you can use the workflow migration utility, but you need to run only for step 12 since you already migrated all the objects. So using the recon.bat, you can migrate the objects. So this is a syntax. In my system, I had installed Developer Studio in C program files, PMC software, ER system. So in that, I can find the recon.bat. So you can just use the recon.bat, and you can pass server information and the path to the def file. So these def files were out of the box, base objects from the old environment. In case of, if you are using a workflow migration utility, so these objects were already generated by the utility, so you can just point to that location. If you are migrating objects manually, then you have to ensure that you have all those base objects in the specific location, and you can pass that parameter. Okay, so this is an example. So you have once utility completes successfully, it will generate an XML file. This XML file will contain a list of all objects that needs to be reconciled using manual three-way recon using the Developer Studio in the later stage. So let me explain a scenario where it would perform auto reconciliation. So from the picture, top right hand side portion is the overlay, and the bottom is the base object property. So overlay is created, and the set default value was part of the overlay. So out of the box, those are empty, so there is no value present in the base. But here the overlay is created, and the default value was set. And during the upgrade, so it upgraded base object, and the values were present in the base for the pattern and default value. And in the upgrade, in the overlay, you still see the old value. That means it is preserving your customization during the upgrade. Since there are some changes in the base, so we need to reconcile them. So when you use auto recon, so what it does is it will cascade the changes of pattern value into overlay, but it did not merge the changes for the default value. The reason is we already have a value defined in the overlay and we do not want to overwrite the customization. And so this will be deferred to manual three-way reconciliation. So if there is no conflict, it automatically merge with the overlay. And if there is any conflict, that will be noted down in the XML file and that will be used part of the three-way reconciliation. So with this auto recon, it will reduce your manual reconciliation effort. And here is a sample output of auto recon utility. So the utility successfully reconciled field length and cascaded changes from base to overlay. And in the old base, it says 255 and new base, it is 4000 and it automatically, migrated that change to overlay. And here it says the no action required. And here is another example. The utility could not perform auto reconciliation because it could not determine the cosmetic layout of X and Y coordinates. So you will see manual reconciliation needed. So it says like, old base has a certain X coordinate and new base has a different coordinate and overlay still holding the, old coordinate. So when you open the, form, you may see distorted layout. The reason is you need to perform the reconciliation. So once you perform manual reconciliation, then view will be uh, looking nice as per the new layout. So let's move on to the next section, which is a manual three-way reconciliation. So this is nothing new. It's the same old process that you are following for almost 10 to 12 years since we introduced overlays in 7604 version onwards. So these are the steps that you need to follow to perform manual three-way reconciliation. So what you need to do is you need to copy the XML files generated by the auto recon, and you have to place it, in the workspace folder of Developer Studio. And then you need to relaunch the Developer Studio in best practice mode. And then you can navigate to ER System Navigator section. And when you expand, you will see a Recon application, and then you will see objects to reconcile. And when you double click on that objects to reconcile, it will show the list of objects to reconcile. So these are the just steps that we already discussed. So if you are using workflow migration utility uh, to perform auto recon, so the files are generated in your tool server. And if you are performing three-way recon in in your laptop using Developer Studio, what you have to do is you have to copy those files. And before launching the Developer Studio, you need to update, the server information and the path, since you copied from, tool servers to your local desktop. So once you save this XML, you can place it in the Developer Studio workspace, and then you can launch the file. So once you launch, you can see, objects to reconcile. So this is how it looks like. So, you see the objects to reconcile here, and then list of objects that needs to be reconciled. So in order to perform three-way reconciliation, so you can just right click on the object and you can click on reconcile. Then it opens up, the objects to reconcile. And these are the various, objects that you need to reconcile. You can just double click on, one by one, and then it automatically populate. So here is a sample example. So here it says old base, and this is a new upgraded environment, and this is your overlay. So the overlay has information from your old. Now it is your decision whether you want to keep changes from your old keep information from your old, or you want to merge from the new. So here you have an option to move from old or move from new. And sometimes if you think like, this is, no longer required, and you can just delete a granular overlay on this specific object. So you don't need to reconcile in your in future. So this is another sample example. So it's a qualification. So in the base, you see empty. So customer created, an overlay with some qualification. During upgrade, so we introduce some qualifications. So now you need to merge the changes. If you don't merge the changes, then um, the system will not behave as per, new upgraded functionality. So same thing, you have an option move from old and move from new. So when you say move from new, then it will merge the changes from upgraded, feature to your overlay. It will cascade those changes and save it, and then you can use it. You can do testing. So to add permission to overlay, our best practice recommendation is set to granular overlay type to additive instead of override. So here, when the overlay was created, so the overlay type was set as override. So if you set it as override, what will happen is during upgrade, if we add or remove, in the base, it will not affect in the overlay. So you need to do a manual reconciliation. So if you set it as additive, then what will happen is whatever changed or deleted in the base will automatically reflect in the overlay along with your customizations. So in case if you think, okay, overlay is not required, so you can go ahead and click remove granular overlay. Then what will happen is the granular overlay is removed on this object, and you don't need to reconcile in future. And this is another example. So same thing for old base, new base, and overlay. And here you have an option to remove view overlay or delete view overlay. So there are different features available. In case if you want to remove the overlay, or if you still want to keep the overlay, but if you want to merge the changes, you can merge the changes from, upgraded environment to overlay by clicking on move from new. So in this image, the selection properties are displayed. So the old base and overlay appears identical with additional value added to the upgraded object in the middle. So if you believe overlay was created by mistake, if you wish to delete it, you can click on remove from granular overlay, or you can, merge the changes from, base, new base to overlay so that you can get benefit of the upgraded functionality. And similarly, in this image, so input length was defined as 255, and in the new definition, it was 3, and overlay definition, it is 255. So again, you can, use this feature. You can either get it, you want to keep new one, or you want to keep new length, you can decide. Okay. So thank you, everyone. So let's open the floor for Q&A, and I will hand it over to Sam.
Thank you, Sankar. Hopefully everyone's found that useful. I'm just going to give the ability for everyone to speak with us if you have any questions. I saw we didn't have any in the Q&A, so don't be shy if you've got any questions for us. Some of the content that we shared today, something that Murali mentioned that we do have additional, we will probably push this out as a video. I don't know, Murali, if you want to add additional to that, but I think we're going to wait once it's produced. If it's quite a lot of content, then we will probably put in another webinar. Although I say that the series has ended, this was a series of 3 sessions we've done with different tooling. We're always working on new stuff. So any of you that follow our webinar program, we will always include ones that we feel are useful. So again, have a think about if there's any content on the BMC products around containers, around migrations, anything that is useful. If you want to fill in the survey, let me know if there's anything you'd like us to work on. And then in relation to what we've shared today, there will be additional content. Murali, I don't know if you want to just add to that.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, you said right. So we've been doing this series, right? So for example, all the tools we're talking about, either the data migration tools or the customization export input tools, whatever we talked about, license conversion utility. So we are basically trying to make sure that these tools are really helping all the customers out there, partners out there, on their process of either deploying in on-prem or your journey from on-prem to SaaS, right? So that's the whole goal here, right? So make sure we give more automation. Hopefully there are certain tasks you're doing or you're able to do it in less time, right? So like some automations are like, for example, half and half. For example, if you don't want to bring all your customers, as Shankar was saying, then basically you still have some semi-automation, which means you can still export it through Developer Studio, import through Deployment Console, right? So yeah, we have all those, and then as in when we see like if we can do more use cases on any of these tools like license conversion, or from migration to auto recon or 3-way recon, anything we can find, then we'll definitely do some more videos and we'll let Sam know, and she'll be able to post it in the same series, so you'll be able to take advantage of those.